Why are you making it sound like they're going to get a little wet? Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash. If you're joining us again, welcome back. I can't speak for you, but I don't feel especially fucked to hell. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the party. We are a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a movie is a hack,
a total joke, a waste of time,
or a slash.
Totally killer, pun intended.
We believe horror is for everyone, and as such, we're rating these movies with a perspective we've gained from our varying walks of life and the flavors of fear we fancy most. My name is Chris. I'm your friendly neighborhood slasher enthusiast. This week I'm joined by the Superfly Space Guy, Mac.
You know I don't go in there anymore since I found that stiff sock.
The classic horror connoisseur, Sean.
You still got some of Barbara's load on you.
And the paranormal paramour, Binks.
It is what it is. The word of the Lord.
This week we're back in theaters to explore another Stephen King adaptation.
And if you support the show, you'll also get to hear our B-side at the end of this episode where we get into some of the creepy toys from our childhood.
In 1985, Stephen King published a short story collection titled Skeleton Crew. Now, among its pages was The Mist, which we reviewed exactly 1 year ago tonight, back in episode 319. This year, though, we're checking out an Osgood Perkins adaptation of another story from Skeleton Crew, a story involving a cursed toy. The film explores the tragedy that befalls a pair of twin brothers after they find a seemingly benign toy. When they try to get rid of it and move on with their lives, though, we see that some things refuse to stay buried. This week, we're talking about The Monkey. What were you all expecting going into this one?
I feel like the trailer was a little bit interesting, right? I feel like this trailer, at least the trailer I remember watching, it seemed like, man, this looks like it's going to be a little quirky, right? A little wild, could be a little bit fun. And obviously, you said it, it's based off of Stephen King's short story of the same name. So there's a lot of interesting things surrounding this film. And despite, I feel like, its mediocre scores that I was seeing on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and things like that, I was actually hearing a lot of good stuff surrounding this movie. I was hearing things like fun, funny, entertaining, even gory yet hilarious kills, right? So I feel like, yes, it had my attention. And I think an Osgood Perkins film, right? Written, directed, he's acted in a number of movies, anything ranging from Nope to Legally Blonde, right? Like, that's wild. And then more importantly, recently he directed Longlegs. So I went into this movie not knowing exactly what to expect, other than I felt like it was going to be a little bit zany, a little bit weird, maybe weirdly fun.
Interesting, because I didn't pick up on the quirkiness in the trailer, at least when I was watching them. I think what I thought was that this was going to be over the top in its gore and the death. I just thought it was going to be so far across the line that I was going to feel kind of grossed out almost, not by what's on screen, because we've seen it 1,000 times, of course, but like just the sheer volume of it was just going to be overwhelming. And I was not looking forward to that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because Osgood Perkins is obviously working very hand in hand with Neon right now. And when I saw the teaser, it was like, okay, Osgood Perkins, I know he can do some dark shit. It's with Neon, so it's going to have a good budget. I feel like this is going to be a good film, And then I'm thinking, James Wan, what are you doing here? How did you get on this table? How are you in this mix? It's a weird, and then we're talking a Stephen King adaptation, which usually is, there are other directors, right? So it's just very interesting conglomerate of people involved in this film. I didn't catch up on the quirkiness, though. That's the one thing that I agree with you, Mac. I didn't realize that it was going to be funny. I just thought it was going to be like a weird, scary film. In the stereotypical way with James Wan involved, because you can't help it, right? Like, there's probably going to be a flashback or two. And I like James Wan films, but I just thought it was going to be very serious with a lot of gore. Completely agree with you.
I was right there with both of you. I did not pick up on any of the zaniness outside of what a couple of our Discord members were saying about this movie in their initial reaction to it. But going into this, I expected that more somber, that more sinister take. Really, the entire time that I watched this, I had such a range of feelings. I laughed. I felt like I should have been laughing in moments and I wasn't laughing. I cried. I winced a bit. And man, I was also hit with this feeling of when the fuck was the last time I saw a phone book?
Yeah.
You got some nostalgia in here, you know? This movie has a way of sneaking up on you, and just, again, from the wild range of emotions I felt down to the, they really packed some shit in here that's going to make me think about things that I haven't experienced in my life in so long.
It was so interesting, all the anachronisms that are like throughout this thing where you can't really figure out, I know this is set in modern times, but is it? Because if they removed a couple things, it wouldn't be. Most of the movie feels like it's supposed to be set between the 70s and the 90s. And in reality, it's modern times. It's really weird. It definitely lends to this interesting timelessness that we've seen in a lot of recent properties, whether it's TV or movies, where, yes, we know it's set in, yesteryear, kind of, but it's also set in Tomorrowland in a way. So it's interesting. It doesn't really matter when it's happening. And the way that they write things, like people are using landline phones in this film, which is phenomenal because I think they could have chosen to say it's 1988, it's 1975, it's 1996. It doesn't matter. And that's what works really well here. From start to finish, this is a wild ride. They are doing so many things with the editing, with the sound design, with the music, and especially with the effects on screen to constantly go after all those little neurons in your brain and make sure that they are firing at full speed. Because there's moments that you could slip into a little bit of like a lull and they're like, nah, just kidding. Gotcha. They splash something on the screen. They have a loud sound that cuts really quickly, whatever it is. They want to keep that adrenaline going the entire time. But it's also got that quirkiness to it. It's got this weird out of place time setting. It's got characters completely out of left field.
No, for
right.
sure.
And so you're watching this just kind of like picking up on everything that's constantly going on the screen. It's not full ADHD. It's not all the way there, but there is not a moment where you can just let your guard down while watching this.
You mentioned the time element of it, Mac, and it reminds me of this feeling of being out of time in the same way that It Follows felt. And obviously this one has some very specific technology or elements to it. And we have, date cards where you at least get one point of reference on what year it is. And then a certain time, a certain amount of time passes. So we get when it's supposed to be, but the feeling of the moment is very different. It was It Follows and it was Rob Zombie's Halloween, where you have a sense of when this movie takes place, but you can't pinpoint anything in particular to show you, yes, this is when it takes place.
Yeah, I feel like this movie made me feel a lot of things. I think the most important one that I can think of is that it just felt for some reason like I was just stuck on the fact that it felt really lighthearted, right? So strange for how intense and gory some of these scenes are, because I found myself laughing during a lot of these moments, including the kills. And I feel like this movie just had a really interesting and good balance where you felt emotional in some parts, right? There was tension and suspense, but it also didn't feel too serious. And it actually made for a really fun and gory kind of campy horror flick. And so it was a lot going on in this movie and the way that it balanced some of these things out. But I think just this lighthearted feeling was so interesting for what it was really kind of showing you.
And it's interesting because I didn't expect it to be so funny. And so I was so disarmed when it really just starts with humor and ends with humor. The whole way through. It's one big dark comedy. And I've seen the movie twice now. I got an early screening for it and I watched it again last night. Both times laughing maybe like a good 85-90% of the time. Nonstop. Even more so the second time around. It just really hits. And the beauty of Osgood Perkins is like, man, is this your sense of humor? I feel like it is. And if so, man, I would love to hang out with him. He is my kind of guy. This is incredible humor because it's also talking about really dark shit that he has gone through personally. Both of his parents died in the most insane ways. I know that when we saw Longlegs, I made the connection that his dad was Anthony Perkins. Then doing a little bit of a deep dive, realized, okay, his dad passed away from AIDS, which is tragic, but his mom passed away in the 9/11 attack?
What?
Hello? That's crazy.
Really?
Fun fact for the day.
Terrible.
Yes.
Not fun at all.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
I know. That was
fucked
But
up
again,
fact
look at
of
me
the
with the
day.
dark humor. Do you see how we would be best friends? I'm just saying. So this film feels personal, obviously. It uses humor to explore grief, daddy issues, you know, how we glamorize kills and the insanity of gore in the horror genre. And it's so fun on a rewatch, I have to say, because you like really take a moment now that you like know the comedic bits. You realize like, oh, he's like a sinister guy. The way that he laughs, like if I would love to have dinner with him and he would say some fucked up stuff, not in an offensive way, right? But in a way that like, wow, I feel like so disarmed and I feel like I can be vulnerable and like just be silly and say some quirky stuff around you because you have no filter. You'll do whatever. You don't even care. And apparently this movie was supposed to be serious, like a very serious script. And he went in there saying, no, we're not going to do that. It's a damn monkey.
Change it up.
Okay? Change it up.
Well, thank God, because, man, it was like one of the more surprising things in the film, right? Like, to everyone's point. I see in the trailer that I watched, like, I see this toy monkey and I instantly think like, okay, this is going to be kind of a wild ride, right? Like anytime there's this toy monkey involved, and if you've read the short story, right, like you're just thinking, how is this going to be adapted onto film? And it just looked like it was going to be a little bit over the top, right? I think, Mac, you said it. You're expecting some intense, gory kills. And I think I'm just thinking, campy ass toy monkey killing a bunch of people, right? That was my initial thought. But I think you might be surprised and possibly disappointed to find that we actually don't even get that iconic eerie monkey with the clapping cymbals in this movie, right? I don't know. I don't even remember if they showed the whole monkey with the drums in the trailer, but we see the monkey, right? And I feel like it's just such a weird fact about this movie because instead, obviously, we get this drummer monkey because Disney technically has the rights because of fucking Toy Story 3, which is wild because the fucking director only put the cymbal monkey in there as a nod to Stephen King. And it's a nod to Stephen King, but couldn't be used in the adaptation of his own fucking story. So it's a weird conundrum that is like surprising and also kind of disappointing.
Listen here, man. If we live in a world where you can watch Terrifier 3 on Disney property and Mickey Mouse is going to be in Screamboat Willie, I think they could have gotten away with the drums.
Yeah.
Fucking go hard, Neon. Somebody's going to have your back in the court system.
The whole organ grinder monkey thing is so bizarre to me anyway, like walking around with a little capuchin monkey and they're playing, you know, they're playing some cymbals and doing some little dances to bring you some money because you broke. Mm-hmm. That whole setup was severely strange.
Yeah.
Just like this movie is severely strange, but I think Sean hit it on the head that the thing that catches you off guard is definitely the humor and the quirkiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, here's the thing. What caught me off guard in this movie was twofold. One, how absolutely stacked the cast is. We have some Parks and Rec vets in this movie. And throughout all of that, I mentioned earlier that I laughed. The movie felt very front-loaded on the comedy for me. And there were moments that for sure I'm like, okay, this is funny, but it felt more like when you write LOL and you're kind of tickled inside, but not enough to outwardly emote that you're laughing.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, I would say probably around like the halfway point, I stopped laughing out loud. I laughed out loud in the first half of it. And I don't know why that is. I'd be curious to see what that looks like on a rewatch, but it felt like a couple actors gave me a lot of the comedy in the front part of the movie, and then all right, we just kind of taper off a little bit.
I have a similar disappointment because notice how I said 80%, 80 to 85, because that small bit was that lull. There was a lull in maybe the second half. Maybe even if we were to segment it into thirds, right? The third act. And I think it's because it pivoted into a serious film for just a brief second.
That's where
and the
it
whiplash,
felt long.
Yeah, it felt long and the whiplash hits you when it goes right back into comedy. However, I full on was in tears laughing yesterday. In tears laughing. I've quoted the movie several times, and not just my opening quote, because I say it is what it is constantly. So I felt heavily seen. I felt insanely seen by that quote, but there are some other fantastic quotes, guys, that you're just gonna revisit multiple times in conversation throughout the year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You mentioned earlier how it pivots to being a serious movie. This movie is laced with serious topics all throughout it, but it handles it very deftly.
Yeah.
It takes it with a grain of salt. It talks about it and says, hey, we're going to sit in this. This is going to be uncomfy. It's going to be real sad, but we're going to have a good time with it. And I think it's a really good reflection of even that level of processing that you would want to do in your own life. But I will say that it doesn't make any of it even remotely tense. Yeah. This is a good horror comedy, right? It's a tragic comedy. It's a tragedy. There's a lot in here to go on a really interesting journey with in terms of like your emotions and what you're feeling. But even when we have our most violent moments, it feels slapstick funny.
It's true. And I think it's, to your point, that's why you're probably not going to find this movie scary at all, because of that approach to its extreme gore. Everything is done in a way that makes it almost so over the top that it's almost comical. And I found, I've already said it a number of times, I just found myself laughing out loud during almost every single one of these kills. Almost every single one. Even when they were like super serious at first, right? That didn't seem super comical. There was a couple in there in the first half of the film where I was just like, no, it's actually too wild to not laugh. And that's what I found myself doing throughout the entire film. And so, it takes away from the fright factor, but not the fun factor.
And I think the fact that it's over the top really helps with it being not super duper scary, because when you watch a Final Destination, you're putting together in your mind how these things could happen to me in ways that I don't expect, because it's all seems so real. This one has a similar kind of kill factor going on, where it's not somebody stabbing you. It's a series of occurrences that, just take you out or whatever, but they're so over the top that you're not really worried like you would be. You're not worried about that log truck. You're thinking that is absolutely insane. And I see how it's happening. Like, the logic works, I guess, here, but I'm not concerned it's going to happen to me. I think really the focus really kind of comes into the gore. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of it. And so if you're a gore fan, you're going to love that. If you're not a gore fan, you might look away a couple times or wince a little bit, but it doesn't make it seem scary. It just makes it seem squishy.
Squishy is so good. That's a great way to put this, because there's definitely some interesting kills and squishiness. I can't wait for Sean to share his thoughts on the gore, because boy, oh boy, if you don't like gore, don't see this. I don't know how. I say from like the perspective of the intro to horror community, right? Like, they're dabbling their toes in the water. They're asking us, oh, what movie should I see? I'm not really into horror movies, but I can do XYZ. If one of those things is, can't really do too much gore, wrong, not with this movie. But Mac, you said it. If you have seen Final Destination and you like that movie, this is the one for you. I haven't seen Dead Alive, but I assumed that maybe this would be kind of a little bit of that regard to an extreme. You guys have, so you could tell me if I'm wrong. I thought of like Evil Dead as another one
for sure
that, in terms of campiness and horror. So when I think of originality and like its approach to it being a horror, it's a comedy, right? And it's more of that than it is to be scary. The only thing scary about this movie is the monkey. But in terms of originality, that's what makes it great and original in my perspective, because we said it earlier, this could have been another serious adaptation of a Stephen King film. And Osgood Perkins said, I did my Silence of the Lambs film not too long ago. I'm probably going to do other serious stuff later. If this is about death and grief, I know a thing or two about some wild stuff. I'm going to do it in a funny way because it's a toy. And I appreciate that, because when we've got The Boogeyman, right? We saw that earlier last year. The way that it approached its short story adaptation was it took a small, minuscule moment of that short story, blew it up into a whole film, and was very serious. I enjoyed that movie. If you haven't watched it, I would say to watch it and then listen to our episode on it, because it's a good approach to a Stephen King adaptation short story. But this one, I think, is like similar in its approach, but it is a great standalone. I could have watched this movie never knowing that it was adapted to Stephen King and been fine about it. I don't need to know the origin of the monkey. I don't need to know that it's a Stephen King thing to read the original short story. I haven't. I don't know. Have you, Sean? Did you read the short story for this?
I have read it, yeah.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts then on like how it adapts, because to me it's like, oh, this is Stephen King. That's actually the last thing in terms of the long list of what I appreciate about this film. And that's never the case with me.
Yeah, this is one of those where if you walked into it having zero context of Stephen King and you're not super familiar with his work or the tropes of Stephen King, then you'd absolutely miss it. But I think for as different as this movie is, both from its original short story and just a Stephen King property as a whole, there are still some great Easter eggs baked in for, you know, the knowing glance, the wink and you'll miss it kind of situation. And I think what this movie does really well is it makes me curious to know, what does this feel like seriously? What would I feel if I were to read the story? I don't have to find out, because I think this handled it in the way that I needed this kind of context or this content to be handled. So listen, shout out to Osgood Perkins for being able to take on Stephen King doing something completely fucking different and not getting the Stanley Kubrick reception.
I mean, it's true, right? It's not always easy to adapt Stephen King's work and translate that to film. And there are definitely some key differences in this one. It's kind of hard to really dive into that without giving any spoilers away. But Oz Perkins did find a way to essentially have this film stand on its own. To your point, right? Like, you don't necessarily need to have read the short story to appreciate this film, and vice versa. But yeah, there's enough key differences here that allows that to happen. I like that. One thing we can probably share is that I think that I like that it kept the origins of this monkey ominous and unknown, right? Like in both the story and this movie, we're not focused on the origins of the monkey, right? We're just focused on the story at hand. And obviously we just talked about the monkey design itself changing for better or worse. That's up to you, right? But the way that the toy works, right? The powers of this toy that be a little bit different than the story. There are certain elements that were added for film entertainment purposes. And of course, like the ending, I think is one of the biggest differences between the story and this film. So I feel like, yeah, there's just enough differences where you have to give Perkins credit for reimagining this story, this short story, and bringing it to life on film.
Gosh, I'm glad you mentioned the ending, because that was so different, I feel like, from the rest of the film. It was really weird. I haven't read the short story, so I'm not sure what it's like and what its ending has. But this one was, let's take that quirky campiness up to another level for a whopping like 3.5 minutes. And it caught me off guard. You know, the rest of the film here was very different. You know, I mean, I think a lot of folks loved Longlegs and they were expecting this to be along the same lines, and they found it's a little bit different from that. You know, this is somebody having a little fun with some horror, and it's gushy, it's gory, it's nasty, it's wild. The characters are cray cray. And then you get to the end and it was silly. It was kind of a silly ending. And then I can't wait for us to talk about spoilers, because there is a character cameo, if you will. There's someone we see on screen that completely caught me off guard.
Right.
And I'm still not sure how I feel about that happening at the end of this film.
I'm so with you on that. Definitely something strange that we're going to have to talk through in the spoiler zone, because it was definitely an interesting thing to throw at you at the end. But outside of that, yeah, I feel like this ending really wrapped up exactly as this movie should have ended. Not that I predicted that the ending was going to be this way, but it definitely ended on a high note.
Yeah, and ultimately, although the humor fell a little flat right before it finishes and puts a bow on it, I would say if you are an Osgood Perkins fan, stick around after the credits, because I didn't when I saw the early screening, but I did last night because I was busy talking to my friends about the film. And all of a sudden I see something on screen and I'm like, oh, was there a end credit situation with a monkey, like, you know, whatever. It's actually a teaser to his next film that he's going to do. My boy has been cooking. All right. He doesn't sleep. He's on to the next one. And the teaser is pretty interesting, I thought, but I'll leave that up to you to decide.
Yeah, I didn't stick around for the teaser, but man, that ending was redemptive for the lull that I felt leading into the third act. Binks, we were talking about that point where it kind of stretches and pivots. It gets a little bit weird. But one of the things that I love about this ending is Yes, it's conclusive. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of sequel baiting or anything like that, but it just feels peaceful. And I don't mean that to imply that there's a happy ending here, because the ending of this movie is fucking chaos, undoubtedly. But there's something emotionally healing and cathartic about the ending of this film that really makes it worthwhile. And I can't wait to see how all of that translates into how we're going to rate this one. But before we get there, Sean, how would you describe the gore score?
You know, this is definitely an interesting one. I feel like this movie definitely, it has a ton of solid gore. And I want to get into it, but I also want to wait till we get into kills. So I'll just put it this way. With everything from human entrails to human flesh made into jelly, this one definitely did not disappoint. And even though it was over the top and campy, and I found myself laughing out loud in most, if not all of these kills, this one is earning itself a high gore score, a hilarious one, but a high one nonetheless.
And what about the animal report?
The monkey doesn't hurt his own friends, so the animals are actually safe.
Well, let's go ahead and get into our ratings then. The Monkey from 2025, now showing in theaters. Was it a hack or a slash? I think we're just going to kick this one off just to get it out of the way. We've said it already this episode, but this movie brings a certain Final Destination energy to the function that manages to blend absolutely absurd comedy with the absolute sobriety of processing grief and generational trauma. Yeah, Binks mentioned it. We have daddy issues galore here. We all have baggage, but this movie feels like it wants to help you carry that load. And I think that's really special. The comedy doesn't always land for me, for sure. Again, it was the silent LOL, not the big LMFAO in a lot of parts, but it was absolutely fucking brutal and buckets of bloody fun. So it's still a slash.
You know, parts of this movie, watching it in a theater, were a little bit insufferable because there were so many people reacting out loud. And there wasn't that many people in my theater. It was that loud, the reactions that it got out of people. And then the further we got into the film, I kept thinking, this is one of those things you experience as a group, because there's moments where people just can't help. There's moments where people just can't help but react, whether it's the gore, the ridiculous humor, the humor of a really dark moment in the film. There's a series of kills here that happen so rapidly, and the audience kept laughing during them. And I love that for a film. It's so absurd, but everybody who's there is having a good time with it. So it is a lot of fun. The pacing is kind of wild. As soon as you think you're going to slow down, they hit you with something really quickly and then cut away really quickly as well. And so it keeps things moving. There's some moments that get a little bit slower, as you've all mentioned so far. But I think you have this fast pace. You have a lot going on screen. You have characters that are fun and silly, and some that you really don't like, and horrible things happen to those people as well. So there's just a lot to love here. I think I would have been happier if there were less gore. And I know that's a controversial opinion talking about this film, but the story would have worked just fine. And I think the silliness of some of these kills would have worked just fine as well. It's just that there was so much of human beings being completely annihilated instantly, just turned into remnants of organic matter. And it was a lot to look at. I'm not a huge gore fan these days. I don't know that I ever have been. I'm not going to let that turn it into a hack, though. I still think it's a slash. It's over the top. I told somebody, bring your raincoat with you when you go see this movie, because you need to be prepared for that. You know, I mean, it's not like you're watching a live show where it's going to splash on you or anything, but it does feel like that.
Why are you making it sound like they're going to get a little wet?
Well, with blood.
It's raining blood.
I'll say my piece on that.
I know.
In the spoiler zone. How about that?
He was hot, Binks. It's okay.
Was?
Oh.
Past tense?
All right.
After this, is that what changed it for Chris? Is this movie changed it? He was hot, then she saw this. No, but I'll stick to it. It's a slash. You know, I've got a friend who's going to go see this tomorrow night. And I was like, yeah, dude, I think you're going to have a good time. It's not what you expect. That's what I told him. Parts of it are exactly what you expect. And then 40% of it is completely not. And I think some of that's going to be having a little fun. Some of that's going to be enjoying some of the dialogue, and some of it's going to be getting into the comedy when you have some of that. The rest of the film, yeah, it's going to go along the lines of what you think you're in for. And that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a film that I did not even anticipate to have liked even more than I did the first time around watching it. And that's been such a nice feeling, right? To revisit a film, a new release specifically, so early in the year and have such a good time watching it, laugh even more than I had ever anticipated. It's just right up my alley in terms of the dark sense of humor. It explores parental abandonment, grief, the glamorization of kills and how we just eat that up and have a good time with it, like if that's normal. And it gets quirky, silly, balls to the wall in terms of creativity and its kills. I just had a blast with this. I really did. And it's kind of like making fun of itself in certain moments. It has no shame. And I appreciate that. In a new release for a big studio to kind of not even care for a Stephen King adaptation when you kind of revere his films and his work and think everything has to be so serious and feel like it's so grandiose. We talked about The Mist earlier. What's his name? Frank Dapapont, the director for The Mist. He was supposed to do this film. And in a way, thank God he didn't, because I feel like Osgood Perkins, now knowing his sense of humor, was made for this kind of stuff. And I feel like this, to me, was the kind of horror comedy that I needed, more so than Hard Eyes. I know I wasn't on that episode, but like, I feel like there's two kinds of people, or three really. You could be in the middle. Chris famously loves her Venn diagrams. So there's the people that love Hard Eyes and the monkey. Then there are those that love Hard Eyes, and then those that like the monkey. I'm more on the monkey side of things, right? Like I have a dark sense of humor. Maybe like I relate more to like British comedy and British TV shows because they kind of align on that front too. So if that's your speed and that's the way that you kind of jive, I think you're really going to like this one. Because for me, despite the pitfalls and the lull, it was so short that the overarching film warranted its slash forever.
Well, I definitely like both of them. It really feels like we're getting a lot of lighthearted horror this year, and I'm here for it, right? We've had a lot of very serious horror over the years, and I think it's really fun to explore something that can show you something serious while still having a good time. And Stephen King film adaptations can be pretty hit or miss, right? Let's be honest. Like, there are some good ones for sure, but there are some pretty bad ones as well. I mean, hell, as good as It Chapter 1 and 2 are, right? They are still far from the book, right? They're still pretty far from the book, and it's probably not an easy feat trying to translate Stephen King's writing into film, even though I feel like he has more movies adapted from his work than any other fucking writer in existence. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But The Monkey takes his chilling short story and finds a way to turn it into a really fun and entertaining movie. And I feel like it's got just the right amount of dark humor. It really does a great job balancing tension with this twisted sense of fun. I think it proves that horror really can have its cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? And we had some really great dual performances from Theo James and Christian Convery. The kills were brutal. They were creative. They were drenched in this almost macabre playfulness that I feel like allows for this movie really never to feel too heavy. And I think that this film knows exactly what it is, right? I think it's suspenseful, but never too serious. It's horrific for sure, but oddly playful at the same time. I think it's like a murderous wind-up toy that won't quit, right? That's really what it is. And horror fans, I think, everywhere should be able to wind this movie up and just let it play, because it's a fucking good time. And this movie might not take itself too seriously, but no monkeying around. This one's a slash.
Well, with that, folks, there you have it. The Monkey from 2025 has earned a universal slash, but there's so much more for us to unpack when we get back from our break. If you've already seen this before, please let us know by joining the conversation about this movie over in our Discord server. You can find a link for that in the show notes. And if you haven't seen it yet, buckle up, check it out in theaters, then join us in the second half, because when we return, we're going to dive deep into our spoiler zone territory and unpack the absurdity of these kills. We'll see you in a bit.
Are you in the market for a mysterious music box that plays on its own? Or maybe just a mildly cursed necklace that whispers sinister prophecies in your ear but goes with every outfit? No matter what you're looking for, we've got it all. So come on down to Hal's House of Haunted Heirlooms. where every item has a story, a soul, and a slight tendency to ruin your existence. We specialize in rare oddities, cursed collectibles, and lightly haunted heirlooms. We have the largest selection of sinister simian souvenirs, everything from antique drumming chimps with a thirst for blood, or to vintage music boxes that definitely don't summon spirits. But wait, there's more. Tell them Hacker Slash sent you and trade in any unwanted cursed item to receive store credit with minimal supernatural backlash. Just remember, all sales are final. No refunds, no takebacks, and no reversing the horrors you've unleashed. So come on down to Hal's House of Haunted Heirlooms, where possession is 9/10 of the law and 10/10 of our inventory. Hal's House of Haunted Heirlooms. You wished for it. Now you're stuck with it.
Welcome back, folks. You're now entering the spoiler zone for The Monkey, which has earned a Universal Slash. Now, we have a lot to unpack here, but before we get into the specifics of our ratings, we have some bananas fucking kills to go through.
Oh, for sure. There is absolutely no way to be disappointed with this kill count, because not only do we get an official 25 kills, not counting the undisclosed amount of victims that we saw like falling through the sky and shit like that, but we also got some really fun and creative kills that made for a wild fucking ride on this death train. And I mean, we're talking flesh grinding, face-searing goodness with all kinds of other wild and zany ways to die. So I gotta know, which one of these kills wound you up?
There are so many fucking great ones, and I feel like it's a crime to even say anything that is my favorite because they're all excellent. But I just want to say, the way my jaw hit the floor, seeing Uncle Chip's remains.
Oh my gosh.
The sleeping bag full of human pudding.
Flesh jelly.
Oh!
Of course, we're back at it again with the same fucking favorite insert here, because Jesus, yeah, the fact that it's Osgood Perkins makes it even better. My boy had like insane sideburns, 67 horses, trample like little cherry pudding.
It was the specificity of that.
It was the specificity.
And the quick cut portrait shot that it just like instantly cuts to his face is like the best. It's so funny. Then second favorite kill is his wife, the aunt, because the clusterfuck of things that woman went through. Oh. Insanity.
A journey. A journey.
Yes, it was a journey. It was a fucked up journey. And then for them to freeze frame on her head being impaled on the real estate sign, crazy. However, one thing I really want to look at when I rewatch this movie is going to be why her face was so close to the fucking stovetop.
You just got to be careful with the fire.
I just don't know who would ever get that close. I agree.
Well, I was wondering, like, was something wrong with it? And she was like troubleshooting it. It was just too much for me. I got to go back and I got to watch it again.
It's true. We would have to watch it again to see if they showed anything different. But my impression was that it was like, just like she was trying to get it started. Maybe she was going in there to I don't know if she was going to check it out or light a match or what.
The insinuation is that she's trying to smell if there's gas coming out of it.
Right, okay, yeah.
But why would you get that close to even still see if you're smelling gas? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, let me also say this is exactly why when I used to rent apartments in Virginia, I was like, fuck that. I don't want a single gas stove.
Oh, no, you have to have gas stove.
I'm not responsible enough for gas stoves.
No, gas stoves is like the only way to cook properly. You can't control the heat on electric, man. It's too fucking much, man. It doesn't cool down fast enough. No, you got to have fire. Fire is the only way to live. But that's another topic for another time. That part of this kill is not even the most ridiculous part of the kill. It's the fact that afterwards she fucking like steps into a goddamn planter and then like stumbles headfirst into a fucking sign in the yard. Like, what in the holy shit happened here?
So
they kept the sign, these savages. They kept the sign.
They put a safety cone over it as if that makes it better. Osgood
good.
Perkins talked about when he was going through like the deaths and thinking about how they would approach it. He wanted things that would not actually ever fucking happen in real life, because that's when you know you hit the level of comedy he's looking for. But he specifically described it as very Wile E. Coyote. Her death is the most Wile E. Coyote of any other death in this film.
100%. I see it. Definitely.
Runner-up of potentially Wile E. Coyote or just absolute insanity has to be, which Halloween film is it that this shitty boyfriend makes this cameo in this film? With the one with the long hair.
Halloween Ends. I fucking hate him. Corey Cunningham. I
Corey
hate
Cunningham.
Ricky. I hate Ricky.
Ricky.
I got so much to say about Ricky later. Fuck Corey Cunningham. No, thank you. I saw
his
that
face.
fucking mouth.
Yep,
I
the
didn't
mouth.
even see it.
It was the mouth.
I saw the fucking mouth and I was like, get the fuck out of my movie.
Listen, that is your Fieldhouse. Like that is your shit. And how I recognized that mouth and knew that it was him was crazy. I was like, oh boy.
To be clear, I enjoyed Halloween Ends to a certain extent, right? Like I enjoyed it, but I do not fucking like Corey Cunningham at all. So get the fuck out.
Does anyone actually? No, he sucks. And so when he gets devoured by a ton of wasps, I was like, what in the fuck?
That was a weird fucking Candyman trip of a fucking kill, though.
Why was this a better version of Candyman 2's kills? And the better swarm?
How are we not getting these kills in the Candyman in general? I want to see this swarm of bees come out of Tony Todd, go into somebody and eat them from the fucking insides, dude. Like, that is some sick ass shit for sure.
God, there's too much to pick over, I think, in terms of kills. Like, I know we have 19 of them listed, and some of those are multiples. So there's a bunch to choose from, but there's a couple that either made me laugh or made me wince. It's really hard to choose. So I think The Babysitter, that was one of those that was such a bummer, but wow, what a kill. The very first kill of the movie, though, that was a make me wince, because when you see it in the trailer, you're imagining he's going to get hit by this bolt and oops, he's dead. No, we didn't get that. We got a bolt going into the guts and we're like, okay, that's it. Nope. And then when it pops out, it pulls out his entrails. And that was a wince-worthy kill for sure. But
what a way to open the film, though.
I mean, gosh, it really set the tone, didn't it? It was like, no, we're going to go 10 miles an hour over what you think speeding is. That's what we're going to do. But there are some kills that really either made you chuckle or really made you laugh. I think one of them is, the young boss, like getting his vape mod stuck in his throat. That was a good chuckle kind of a kill. That wasn't like, okay, not completely laugh out loud, but like a LOL silently or at least quietly. I did enjoy that.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There's a ton of really great kills. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are funnier than others. You mentioned the babysitter, right? The babysitter getting fucking decapitated and the head just landing on the hibachi grill and just starting to cook was absolutely fantastic. I'll talk more about that scene in general, because I think later on when we start breaking down some of our favorite scenes, there's some funny moments that I got out of that scene. But I also got to give it up to the realtor, right? Because it's not even the fact that how abrupt it was that she got completely obliterated by this shotgun from the closet. It's the fact that her fucking fingertip landed in Hal's mouth.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he had to pull her fingertip out of his fucking mouth.
It reminds me of Evil Dead Rise and that eyeball transiting the hallway and landing in another man's mouth. Disgusting.
Yeah.
You so just know though. Weird mouth shit is happening in these horror movies, and few movies are brave enough to point it out.
Yeah, but we love to see it. As much as we don't like it, we love to see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but also the combustion with the electric pool.
Oh, yeah. The Midnight Swimmer.
I was wondering if they were going to be bold enough to just immediately kill Petey. But then when you see this woman out here, simply to pad the body count, you knew what was up.
100%. Also subtle towards the end when we're seeing a lot of like the chaos that's ensuing, but like we're starting to see like a bunch of random shit go down, and just the surfer dude that was like impaled with his own surfboard that was also stuck into the tree. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Also, the fucking cheerleaders who are cheering every time a body is found.
Yeah,
that
like,
was
why?
It was hilarious, but then to get taken out at the end of the movie, just
sideswiped.
So that's the part that I was like, this man is hilarious and he's saying more than we realize because those cheerleaders are us. We're the ones cheering every time we see a new kill
audience.
And we're like, oh, that was crazy. Like, yeah, bring out the dead body. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's, he's like meta. He's literally calling us out in this film. And when they get railed by that bus or whatever, just like absolutely annihilates them at the end too. Fantastic.
Yeah. A couple things that were a bit of a bummer, not to take this into too far of a depressing vibe. Okay. One, the mother's death was terrible.
That was like the one that I was talking about earlier in the spoiler free section where I was like, there are some kills that like didn't feel as funny. You know what I mean? So man, you're right. You're right.
It was hard to watch. Absolutely. And you feel it coming. Especially because one thing that I know for sure in the trailer reveals that both brothers make it to adulthood. So it's something where as soon as he winds it and there's a lack of response from the mom, it's like, okay, well, fuck. Here we are. Buckle up. We're about to cry. And I cried. However, the other thing, and this is just, I think, the timeliness of this movie and where it falls and what's happening in current events, the plane crash was hard to see.
Yeah. That's true.
Plane crashes are always hard to see. I fucking am terrified of flying. I hate flying. Final Destination fucked me up as a kid, right? But in particular, there were some really funny Easter eggs in there with the fact that it's like a skydiving company and they do weddings and it's a bride hanging down. But I think with as much as we've heard lately, and there's no way, right? This movie has been planned and has been made for a long ass fucking time, but it's just eerie to see and it hits different knowing everything that we've had happen lately and how many people we've lost to fatal airplane crashes as of late.
That is true. Poorly timed, but obviously we know it's not intentional, but it's tough. But I can tell you one of the things outside of the kills and the gore and all of that, because we know that that is one of the better parts of the film. Aside from that, I was kind of here for the narration bit throughout the whole movie. It was giving me a little bit of the Wonder Years vibes, you know, maybe some Christmas Story vibes in there, right? Sometimes I'm not here for a narration, right? Like it doesn't make sense or it's annoying. It's like, just give me the movie, give me the story, give me the acting. But the narration kind of added a little vibe to this movie that I didn't mind at all.
Yeah, the narration was top notch. It made me feel like what could be achieved if Mac were to narrate movies. That would be fantastic. I think you got a world of possibilities in front of you, bud. The other thing that I love, though, was basically the way that it used funerals and headshots of portraits from the funerals to just jump forward in time. Like, those are the seed markers, and I fucking loved it. It felt like a great portrait to punctuate every fucking moment. And then we get so many all of a sudden that there's not even enough space to just jump to funerals. We get the breakdown every single day of how many kills were happening. So good.
By the realtor. It was hilarious. And those portraits literally looked like they were straight out of JCPenney. It was fantastic. So good. I would say, speaking of the kills, though, in general, like they were executed so incredibly well. Like makeup effects, everything was fantastic. 97% of it, and the other 3% was like maybe just a little bit of that CGI that missed the mark, with maybe the wasps, and I would say also Bill's head with like his body just like floating there for a second, staggered. The CGI with the bowling ball hitting his head or whatever towards the end, like not exactly as crisp as everything else, but for the most part, fantastic.
Oh, I do love, though, that he went out the way that he always was fantasized of having gone out.
There's a couple things that I really loved about this. And one of them was the very beginning of the movie. The intro credits are fantastic, and it sets the tone for the movie. It's giving me Inglourious Bastards. It's giving me Quentin Tarantino, but in a classier horror themed version. I think a lot of times when you go retro or vintage with your credits and you have some music to match, you're like, okay, you got a shtick. Let's see where the shtick takes us. I think here it wasn't, I don't have a shtick. It's, I have something to say, and I have a really clever way of doing it. And that I appreciated just from the get-go. But beyond that, the rest of the movie, we have this this vintage feel, this retro feel, things that are out of time and out of place. The uncle's glasses and facial hairstyle, right? Those are not of 2025.
Not at all.
They're not of 1999 though. And that's when we were supposedly set in that moment. I'm like, no, this is like 30 years antiquated. And it's so much fun because it's giving me that 70s show for some reason, but it's pervasive. It goes through everything. The set design, the wardrobe, the makeup, all sorts of stuff seem to be from the wrong era based on when we're watching the movie. And that was a brilliant touch. We've mentioned that it kind of makes it a little timeless, but it makes it funky. And I love that funkiness because we've got that combined with quirky characters into this weirdness. It's not weird as in like, I didn't like it. It's strange. It was weird as in like, there's not much else that feels exactly like it. It's its own unique thing.
I have the perfect quote for what you're describing. It comes to us from the script of Grease 2, and it's Michelle Pfeiffer as Stephanie Zanoni saying, it's weird. Not weird, but exciting weird.
Exactly. That is the perfect quote. Thanks, Grease 2. Gosh. But I think all of that is combined with me for the casting that they did here to make this just one hell of a production, honestly. And I know we're going to talk about some of the characters here in just a few minutes, but the cast of this film is so fantastic and made me realize some things about myself. And I don't know that I'm fully comfortable with it yet, but if you look at some of the cast, it reminds me of my adult crushes, my adult like celebrity crushes, you know, because when you're younger, you might have adult celebrity crushes on certain people, but Tatiana Maslany, huge adult celebrity crush, reminds me of Alia Shawkat, also massive adult celebrity crush, even Sarah Levy. And then I'm like, do I have a thing perhaps for the darker hair, especially with the curls? Is that what's going on here? And if you look at my life, that just matches up with reality. So Gotta love that. But Elijah Wood, just a man that you used to love, now you'll love to hate in this film.
True.
What could be better than that? Adam Scott starting us off here was such a pleasant surprise that I'm thinking, did they just get together and think, who are they cool with? Did they put feelers out? Did they do it the old fashioned way? It seems like these are choices you would make if you knew a bunch of really cool people and you wanted them in on a project with you, but it made for almost like a scene by scene delight, just seeing who they're integrating, except for when we get to Rowan Campbell.
Because fuck Corey Cunningham.
Honestly, that's exactly it. But I mean, we even get Oz Perkins himself in the film, and that was a fun casting choice. So it seems like we're eating the dog food here. We're having a good time with the film. And that was just really enjoyable. I think we've all mentioned some great stuff that's gone on, but character work here was so good. One of the best scenes of the movie had to be at least one of, if not both of the major funeral scenes.
For sure.
And it's just, you get a little bit of it in the trailer, but it's so awkward and it's so uncomfortable. And yet it's just comedy. It's pure comedic genius. And that awkwardness is on purpose and is hitting you in the face for a reason. And I loved it.
Yeah. The Reverend was so ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Going up to the podium, being like, "Oh fuck!"
Everything for a reason. Yeah, totally.
Okay,
Totally.
he belonged in Y2K.
Oh, yeah. When he said, he made a comment or something like about heads or tails, but not her head, because that's
Separate issue.
I was in tears. And speaking of comedy, favorite scene is tied between a small moment when it's a callback to something that the mom says earlier when she's talking about how the dad just made like an egg and scrambled, you know, trying to get, you know, a pack of cigarettes, never came back. But when fast forward, Hal just screams it, we need to make like an egg and scramble, make like eggs and scramble. I was in tears, crying of laughter because holy shit, yes. Has that not been me? I feel like that constantly. It was incredible. But that's one. Tied with, you mentioned him earlier, good old Elijah Wood. The shock on my face when I saw that he was in this movie. No one could have seen it because I was like taken aback, went so far into my seat because I was stunned. More so because it's not even that Elijah Wood was in this movie. It's that Elijah Wood is Tony Robbins. He's like basically Tony Robbins / Joel Osteen with his plethora of books of being an industry leader in his field or industry expert of fatherhood and all of his like some of them was like Jesus Dad and Fatherhood 3 and all of these books wearing what kind of jumpsuit was that? His nipples were so hard in that jumpsuit. What was happening?
It was like really showcasing, his man boobs.
It was a bit nipply.
His form. Like, what's happening? It was fantastic. He was such a dick. I loved it.
Great scenes, right? But just to touch back on the hibachi scene, because it's not even that the scene itself or what is actually happening is super, super funny, but it's just as soon as I saw this hibachi scene going down and I'm watching this chef, twirl his knives around and he's like doing these little like faces and they're just eating it up, right? It just, that scene was so funny to me because I feel like every white dude or white person loves to go to hibachi and just be entertained by some dumb, mindless bullshit with shitty food. Like, when's the last hibachi place you went to and it was actually like fucking delicious food? Like, it's the best food you've ever had. It's like fucking mediocre food. They're shooting sake out of a fucking like condiment squeeze bottle into your mouth. They're lighting shit on fire. And we're just eating it up like we're at fucking Disneyland or something. We eat that shit up, us white guys,
Okay, I've actually had pretty good hibachi. But hibachi in the experience, I was just saying this earlier, is an introvert's nightmare because they want to talk to me way too fucking much. And like, if not the person cooking or making jokes, the other people at the hibachi table, no fucking thank you. I'm just here to dine.
Oh man. Hey, I'm not saying there isn't good hibachi out there. I'm sure that there's decent hibachi, but I haven't had anything that's going to be like mind blowing. Like if I go to a 5-star restaurant, right? Like it's just like, okay, it's fried rice. You've got some chicken on there. They throw it on the grill. Like it is what it is. It's not, I've had some really questionable hibachi, but I've also had some decent hibachi. But nonetheless, I think people just eat it up for the experience for whatever reason. But I will say, I do think that there was a scene with a little more serious tones, right? There was the scene after the mom dies, shortly after there, where Bill notices something outside of the window, right? And it's that scene where he's looking out the window in the dark and starts to see that evil face of the toy fucking monkey emerge from the darkness. There was just something ominous about it, the way the monkey's face faded into view. And you could see that there was this moment of realization which they play into when Hal and Bill have that talk about the moment Bill realized the evil powers of the monkey. And that's when he was like, that's that critical moment where whatever, he went on this whole fucking path of fucking everything up,
Damn, that was a really good one. And I love the way the monkey fucking lurks in the background and corner of what feels like every frame of this movie. Obviously it's not, but it feels like you can feel the monkey's presence even when you can't see the monkey. And I want to take it back to my favorite scene because before all this bullshit really rears its ugly head, we have the funeral, post hibachi, post beheading, post stoner priest, and we have their mom's breakdown of death.
Ooh, yeah.
I absolutely fucking love this because she has clearly had exceptional execution of her comedic dialogue, right? There's a moment earlier where she even says, what's worse than a blind date? I'd rather kiss a goddamn frog and see what happens. Relatable. I get it. But at the funeral, she's planting the seed of how they need to come to terms with and process loss and death. It's not if or even how, but only when. Everybody dies, and that's life. This is the whole heart and spirit of this entire movie. But these boys are, they're too young to understand what their mom is really saying. And what I love about this movie is how you can take this thesis, but you see how people operate when they don't heed these words or they're not really processing it in a way that feels healthy. This entire movie is one big, long experience of a man who hasn't really healed from his mother's death, but then comes to terms with it and then realizing, okay, yeah, maybe we should dance. It's really beautiful to have that emotional sucker punch and then to have them dance together.
Yeah.
And then only for what feels like the next day for her to die. It's just terrible. But her presence in this movie just is so fucking heartfelt.
Oh, for sure. And they sprinkled those like gut-wrenching moments throughout the movie. Like this movie is filled with dark humor, but it's also got these little dollops of like really kind of intense emotional scenes. There's another one I think of was at the mom's funeral when Bill stands up and stops the whole thing and just has that moment where he's like, "Mom, wake up." And it's just like, fuck, what's happening? And he's like, "Okay, go on." And that was like, he just realized, yeah, he had that moment. And that was just a fucking emotional ride right there, which I would say like directly ties into the performances that we get, because you know, whether we're talking about young or old, the fact that we got these dual performances for Hal and Bill, both actors did such a phenomenal job playing these two brothers and contrasting each other with the different personalities and different things like that, that I was actually really surprised in a horror movie that we got such good performances.
Oh, 100%. I've never seen Divergent, but I almost want to see Divergent because this guy fucking rocks.
You've put out my trap card. So here I go. Theo James. Ladies and gentlemen. Boy, oh boy. Where do I start? Here's a problem. What is he doing in this movie? Because if you're supposed to be a guy that doesn't have any friends, that's reclusive, but you are probably, I don't even know, are you like in the top 25 or like 50 hottest guys on this planet? Maybe. That's probably in some kind of like People magazine at the very least. Like, it's just not, it's just, my generation is like foaming at the mouth for this guy. What do you even mean? It's crazy. Divergent was like only great because of him. No offense to Shailene Woodley, but let's be honest, okay? I don't even think he was like a good actor in that movie. I think we were just stunned that he was a human that existed on this planet.
Oh, he's not like a good actor? Well, you see that he is, but in that movie, he's not a particularly good actor.
I couldn't even tell you. Was I fully like assessing? Who knows? The thing is that Divergent, well, the thing about Divergent is that it's Divergent, you know, like it's of the YA time. Like it was that or Hunger Games, and Hunger Games wins, right? So the right answer, by the way, if you were going to tell me something different, we're going to have a chat. I think that he's very good in other more recent things though. The White Lotus season 2 snaps. He snaps. I think he does a really good job in that one. He's in The Time Traveler's Wife, the show. And that one, you know, mixed reviews depending on how you fall in terms of the book or the movie. I think he's a great actor for sure. But in Divergent, don't use that as the indication to gauge his talents. Just watch him because you can see a young Theo James. Also, his name. Are you kidding? What? Get out of here. And he's British. Come on. It's too much.
I did enjoy The Gentleman. And that was my entry into his career, honestly. I don't think I've ever seen Divergent. And The Gentleman was great. He was really solid in it. When I saw him in the trailer for this, I was caught off guard. I didn't imagine that he would be in this kind of movie. And I think it worked out really well for him. Like you said, though, he's exceedingly attractive. So for his character here, it doesn't perfectly match up because it's unbelievable, which is hilarious because when he plays his brother, you buy it. So it's interesting, that strangeness between these two characters that look exactly the same technically because they're the same human being, but there's a big difference. Can we go back to their mom for just a moment? Because the She-Hulk of it all, this woman is a national treasure, an absolute gem. And Chris, you mentioned her monologue earlier. And I think it was just her delivery of that final "Let's Go Dancing" that was so perfect. I think that's really what nailed it in. It wasn't like a big sigh, I guess we can go do this like a lot of people deal with it. It was like, bro, this is life. You have to keep moving forward because you have no control over these things. And you can't start to imagine that you have control over these things every time. You really don't. And her description of their father when she's laying it out for them was so perfect. Like, she's somebody who's over it. She's beyond, she's past it. She's just going to be real with her boys. I think that flowed into them and who they were as people as well.
Yeah, I mean, she was definitely an OG, right? She was just telling it like it is to her kids, which sometimes I feel like you got to do, right? You can't sugarcoat everything in life. And the delivery was great, right? Like, I feel like it was a good character in contrast to the rest of the film. But I am curious also, I don't know if I'm crazy, but it had me thinking, right? Was their dad also the dad of Ricky?
They're two different people because Adam Scott is a pilot. And Ricky's dad was the police officer.
But that's true. That's true. He had the cop outfit.
Yeah. But what I think, like, the story, right? Or what Osgood was maybe trying to do was, like, again, like that daddy issue situation here. That potentially the monkey like kind of lures what seems to be men, because it seems like it was the dad, and then it was his sons, and then it was going to be, you know, Hal's son, and then the appeal that Ricky has to the monkey saying that it looks like his dad. It's like almost like a commentary on I guess fathers or like males to some extent.
Yeah, that's probably the vibe.
But it was interesting because both fathers abandoned their children.
Right.
They went missing. In Bill and Hal's case, their dad went missing, we would imagine, because he was trying to keep them safe to an extent. He left them that monkey and then just disappeared. He panicked, he freaked out, etc.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, Ricky's dad, I mean, we don't have much of an explanation. We just assume that it was, because he went gambling or cheating or whatever the mom tells him. But he doesn't want to believe that, right? He'd rather believe some other story, or he's got that pent-up aggression towards it.
Yeah. Something that I love is how Osgood Perkins is focusing on saying, with all the best intentions, you can make the most terrible decisions for your children. And you try so hard to not put this shit on them that you put on entirely different shit that they're going to have to like fight through and navigate through their entire lives. And so at some point, it becomes a matter of fucking just be with the people you love and keep them close. The rest of the shit, you'll figure it out. But to keep a distance from someone, to create distance and space and walls between people because you're trying to keep each other safe, it's fucking really counterproductive.
Yeah, because the opposite side of that is Elijah Wood's character, who's out here writing books and feeling like he's got it down to a T, but actually has no warmth to him. He has no real care. He's like a standardized version of what a dad should look like because he's present. And that's it? Like, that's all it takes? There's more to it. There's got to be love. There's got to be warmth there. There has to be, to an extent, like some level of flaw so that you can understand a person, especially at the son's age where he's a teenager. He's not going to be the perfect kid either. He wants someone that he can relate to and get to know. And it seems like the stepdad is not someone that he would want to get to know or has any depth to him as a human being whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to know, though, what are your thoughts, obviously, on the strange character that we get at the end, right? What looks to be like maybe death, maybe the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We don't know, right? It feels a lot like that. But what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
It seems like the monkey went so hard on the drums, he busted his nut a little bit and let himself out of the doll.
No. Okay. All
the
right.
Grim Reaper. I took it as one of the, obviously the 4 horsemen, but like a Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
A pale man on a white horse.
Yeah, just strolling through town, fucking shit up. Death everywhere, right? Everyone was dying in that town.
Yeah, their gaze and the stare back at each other was giving, do you come here often?
Yeah, it was a weird daze for sure. Glare, or whatever you want to call it. It was very off-putting at first. I'm like, why is this here? Why am I seeing this?
It was so out of place and so like over the top supernatural, because to this point we were just in a mysterious supernatural and now it's like religious overtone supernatural. I will say that back and forth they had, I did appreciate that because it was kind of like oh, you get it. We're good. Have a good drive. See you next time. They're going to go dancing. And so I like that. It was like, you're in on it now. Fine. I'll keep moving. But it was weird. Like, it doesn't add up why he's there. He's not in the rest of the movie in any way. So that was strange.
Yeah, I think, it's a little nod to Final Destination Bloodlines, and we're going to finally see what death looks like. I'm kidding. Absolutely kidding. But it is very much like, if, as Mac was saying, right, it feels like hey, I see you. I recognize that you are here and you are always going to be here and there's nothing I can do to stop you.
Which is, maybe it's a good little moment of catharsis that we've gotten to at this point in the film where he can now live his life and not have to cut his child out. He learned. He wasn't like his own father. Mm-hmm. He's grown, which is fine.
Exactly. But let me tell you, though, worst part of the movie for me, and maybe this is like a very grumpy thing to say, I didn't like the kaleidoscope dream.
Oh, you didn't like the kaleidoscope dream sequence?
I sure did not. That's saying a lot because I really liked this movie. And even at its worst part, it's still not bad. But it is the one thing where I'm like, okay, I see what we're doing here. It's very trippy. I don't really like things in movies that are trippy, so maybe that's just me. But it was also just the way that he looked being dropped down. Something about it just didn't sit quite right. Quite right with me.
I feel similarly about his casting again, only because, goddamn, He's too fine to be a nerd. I just can't. I cannot believe it.
Honestly,
I cannot believe
it's
it
the
one
glow
bit.
up this kid deserved, though. When you get fucking
Oh.
bananas smashed all over you, good for you growing up to be
Sheesh.
hot.
My Lord. No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, but that's just me like nitpicking too, right? Because of course I'm so happy to see him in this movie. Are you kidding me? I would say that on a serious level, it's gotta be something about that little bit of a lull. Like keep driving that momentum. I think you could still be funny with even like the serious times, because in the first half we've got the mom's kill and it still kept going after that. The laughs were still laughing, like it was still happening. So there was potential there, but it took a moment, and then it felt almost a little bit awkward when it was revealed that it was the brother, because it's like, yeah, I mean, okay. But what else we got? It continued with a little bit more laughs after that, like his little continuing to do the head swipe thing, and his little giggle was really funny, but it just didn't hit the same as much as the first half of the film.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Their dynamic together was nowhere near as funny as I thought it should have been.
I agree. I was unsure, actually. I was like, am I just tired because I saw a late showing after work, right? Like, I was like, am I just tired? Am I just like, at this point in the movie, just like wanting to go home and chill? But no, I'm glad that we're all like in alignment, that there was this kind of moment throughout the film where it just felt like we were kind of dragging on until it finally kind of picked itself back up towards the end.
Yeah, fuck that. I mean, I saw this shit at like 10:15 in the morning. Wide awake.
See? There you go. But yeah, I guess, okay, outside of that, though, I'll just go back to it, right? Like, it just sucks that we had some copyright issues or we couldn't get what the original vision for this monkey is. Because I think, whether you've even read Stephen King's short story or not, I feel like, and maybe it's due to Toy Story, who fucking knows, who am I to say, but whenever you think of an evil monkey toy, I think the first thing you're envisioning is the monkey with the symbols. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. But I wish that we were able to get the original vision. Other changes that were made, I'm here for.
You say evil monkey and I think of evil monkey from Family Guy. That's the only monkey I could think of.
I've mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. The gore was just a little bit too over the top for me, and I think this would have been a much more approachable film had we calmed it down a little bit. Save some of the exploding bodies. Use them sparingly. It seems like we used a lot of them. There was the whole lawnmower thing at one point. That was a lot. Entrails coming out. And I think a lot of folks are fans of gore, and that's obviously fine, and that's okay if you enjoy it. It's just, at this point in my life, I'm a little bit overexposed, I think, to perhaps a lot of gore, and I prefer things to be a little bit less messy. And I think that would have also drummed up some more of that comedy. I think we would have felt it more if some of these scenes focused on being funny, which they were, without having to splatter human pink mist everywhere.
Not only do I not mind the gore, I can't wait to see it all over again when I watch it again in theaters.
I was about to say, I definitely will probably be watching this one again pretty soon. Hopefully, maybe in theaters. I got some time off. Maybe I'll have to wait till I catch it streaming, but this one's way too fun not to watch again. And there are Easter eggs. You're probably not going to catch everything the first time around. I know I probably didn't, because I was so hyper focused on making sure I keep track of specific things for this podcast. So by watching this one again, I could probably just like really hone in on every little detail and have a really, really great time pulling some of these little Easter eggs and different nuances and different things out of the movie. So I'm excited to watch it again.
Hell yeah. Let me go watch Annie Wilkes.
I've already seen it twice, so let me, I guess, watch other films this year since my time is limited now. But I would rewatch it in the future for sure. My own? I'm pretty sure I'm going to buy this one for sure.
Feels like a good choice.
It definitely feels like a movie that you would own on some sort of physical media. I definitely see myself seeing it again. I'm not sure when. I'm not going to go see it in the theater again. Once is enough. I'm not a big theater fan these days, so I wish more things would hit streaming so I could enjoy them at home.
Well, I can't wait to see if any of your opinions sway upon watching this movie more. But for now, there you have it, folks. The monkey has earned a universal slash. And we certainly had a robust discussion here, but the conversation doesn't end here by any means.
Do you like sticking around for those fun post-credit scenes? Want to find out how you can go further than this episode? Consider supporting the show. You can visit patreon.com/hackerslash and enjoy even more of the show, including bonus content with early access, extended episodes with our B-sides, movie nominations, and live shows.
Not me just realizing the B-sides is our post-credit scene.
It is.
Genius. And if you want to keep monkeying around with us, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us continue to deliver great content for all you horror fiends out there.
We'll see you next time, folks. And remember, it's not if or even how, but only when.
Don't think about it too much.